Moreover, the principle of reincarnation is implied in many passages of Holy Writ and is explicitly formulated in the Gospels. When they came down from the mountain after the transfiguration, Jesus gave this commandment and said to them, "Speak to no one of what you have just seen, until the Son of Man shall have been resuscitated from among the dead." His disciples thereupon began to question him and inquired, "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must first come?" But Jesus replied to them, "It is true that Elijah must come, and that he will re-establish all things. But I declare to you that Elijah has already come, and they did not know him, but have made him suffer as they listed. It is thus that they will put to death the Son of Man." Then his disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. Since John the Baptist is declared by Christ to have been Elijah, it follows that the spirit or soul of Elijah must have been reincarnated in the body of John the Baptist. But whatever may be our opinion in regard to reincarnation, whether we accept it or whether we reject it, it is certain that we shall have to undergo it, if it really exists, notwithstanding any beliefs of ours to the contrary. The point which we here desire to establish is this, that the teaching of the spirits who proclaim it is eminently Christian, that it is founded on the doctrines of the immortality of the soul, of future rewards and punishments, of the justice of God, of human free will, and the moral code of Christ, and that therefore it cannot be anti-religious. We have argued the matter, as we remarked above, without reference to statements made by spirits, such statements being from many minds without authority. If we and so many others have adopted the hypothesis of the plurality of existences, we have done so not merely because it has been proclaimed by spirits, but because it has appeared to us to be eminently rational, and because it solves problems that are insoluble by the opposite hypothesis. Had it been suggested to us by a mere mortal, we should therefore have adopted it with equal confidence, renouncing with equal promptitude our preconceived opinions on the subject. For when an opinion has been shown to be erroneous, even self-love has more to lose than to gain by persisting in holding it. In like manner, we should have rejected the doctrine of reincarnation, even though proclaimed by spirits, if it had appeared to us to be contrary to reason, as indeed we have rejected many other ideas which spirits have sought to inculcate. For we know, by experience, that we can no more give a blind acceptance to ideas put forth by spirits than we can to those put forth by men. The principal merit of the doctrine of reincarnation is, then, to our minds, that it is supremely rational, but it has also in its favor the confirmation of facts positive and, so to say, material, which are apparent to all who study the question with patience and perseverance, and in presence of which all doubt as to the reality of the law in question is impossible. When the appreciation of these facts shall have been popularized, like those which have revealed to us the formation and rotation of the earth, they who now oppose this doctrine will be compelled to renounce their opposition. To sum up, we assert the doctrine of the plurality of existences is the only one which explains what, without this doctrine, is inexplicable, that it is at once eminently consolatory and strictly conformable with the most rigorous justice, and that it is the anchor of safety which God in his mercy has provided for mankind. The words of Jesus himself are explicit as to the truth of this last assertion, for we read in the 3rd chapter of the Gospel according to St. John that Jesus, replying to Nicodemus, thus expressed himself, "Verily, verily, I tell thee that if a man be not born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. And when Nicodemus inquires, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter again into his mother's womb and be born a second time? Jesus replies, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. What is born of the flesh is flesh, and what is born of the Spirit is spirit. Be not amazed at what I have told thee. You must be born again. Next chapter, Spirit Life. Errant or wandering spirit, transitional worlds, perceptions, sensations, and sufferings of spirits. Theoretical explanation of the nature of sensation in spirit. Choice of earthly trials, relationships beyond the grave, sympathies and antipathies of spirits, remembrance of corporal existence, commemoration of the dead, funerals. All this is covered in this chapter. This is a very long book. I bet it's going to be 100 videos before I finish it. Anyway, wandering spirits. Question: is the soul reincarnated immediately after its separation from the body? Answer: sometimes immediately, but more often after intervals of longer or shorter duration. In the higher worlds, reincarnation is almost always immediate. Corporal matter in those worlds being less gross than in the worlds of lower advancement, a spirit, while incarnated in them, retains the use of nearly all his spirit faculties, his normal condition being that of your somnambulists in their lucid state. What becomes of the soul in the intervals between successive incarnations? Answer: it becomes an errant or wandering spirit, aspiring after a new destiny. Its state is one of wanting, waiting, and expectancy. Question: how long may these intervals last? Answer: from a few hours to thousands of ages. Strictly speaking, there are no fixed limits to the period of erraticity of wandering, which may be prolonged for a very considerable time, but which, however, is never perpetual. A spirit is always enabled, sooner or later, to commence a new existence, which serves to effect the purification of its preceding existences. Question: does the duration of the state of erraticity depend on the will of the spirit, or may it be imposed as an expiation? Answer: it is a consequence of the spirit's free will. Spirits act with full discernment, but in some cases, the prolongation of this state is a punishment inflicted by God, while in others it has been granted to them at their own request, to enable them to pursue studies which they can prosecute more effectually in the more effectively in the disincarnate state. Question: is erraticity necessarily a sign of inferiority on the part of spirits? Answer: no, for there are errant spirits of every degree. Incarnation is a transitional state, as we have already told you. In their normal state, spirits are disengaged from matter. Question: would it be correct to say that all spirits who are not incarnated are errant? Answer: yes, as regards those who are to be reincarnated. But the pure spirits who have attained to perfection are not errant. Their state is definitive. And this is the author's words. In virtue of their special qualities, spirits are of different orders or degrees of advancement, through which they pass successively as they become purified. As regards their state, they may be, number 1, incarnated, that is to say, united to a material body. 2, errant or wandering, that is to say, disengaged from the material body and awaiting a new incarnation for purposes of improvement. Or 3, pure spirits, that is to say, perfected and having no further need of incarnation. Next question. In what way do wandering spirits obtain instruction? It can hardly be the same way as men. Answer. They study their past and seek out the means of raising themselves to a higher degree. Possessed of vision, they observe all that is going on in the regions through which they pass. They listen to the discourse of enlightened men and to the counsels of spirits more advanced than themselves, and they thus acquire new ideas. Question. Do spirits retain any human passion? Answer. Elevated spirits, on quitting their bodily envelope, leave behind them the evil passions of humanity and retain only the love of goodness. But inferior spirits retain their earthly imperfections. Were it not for this retention, they would be of the highest order. Question. How is it that spirits, on quitting the earth, do not leave behind them all their evil passions, since they are then able to perceive the disastrous consequences of those passions? Answer. You have among you persons who are, for instance, excessively jealous. Do you imagine that they lose this defect at once on quitting your world? There remains with spirits, after their departure from the earthly life, and especially with those who have had strongly marked passions, a sort of atmosphere by which they are enveloped, and which keeps up all their former evil qualities. For spirits are not entirely freed from the influences of materiality. It is only occasionally that they obtain glimpses of the truth, showing them, as it were, the true path which they ought to follow. Question. Do spirits progress in the state of erraticity? Answer. They may make a great advance in that state in proportion to their efforts and desires after improvement, but it is in the corporal life that they put in practice the new ideas they have thus acquired. Question. Are wandering spirits happy or unhappy? Answer. More or less so according to their deserts. They suffer from the passions of which they have retained the principle, or they are happy in proportion as they are more or less dematerialized. In the state of erraticity, a spirit perceives what he needs in order to become happier, and he is thus stimulated to seek out the means of attaining what he lacks. But he is not always permitted to reincarnate himself when he desires to do so, and the prolongation of erraticity then becomes a punishment. Question. Can spirits in the state of erraticity enter all the other worlds? Answer. That depends on their degree of advancement. When a spirit has quitted the body, he is not necessarily disengaged entirely from matter, and he still belongs to the world in which he has lived, or to a world of the same degree, unless he has raised himself during his earthly life to a world of higher degree. And this progressive elevation should be the constant aim of every spirit, for without it he would never attain to perfection. A spirit, however, may enter worlds of higher degree, but in that case, if he finds himself to be a stranger in them, he can only obtain, as it were, a glimpse of them. But such glimpses often serve to quicken his desire to improve and to advance, that he may become worthy of the felicity which is enjoyed in them, and may thus be enabled to inhabit them in course of time. Question. Do spirits who are already purified ever come into worlds of lower degree? Answer. They come into them very frequently in order to help them forward. Unless they did so, those worlds would be left to themselves without guides to direct them. Question. Are there, as has been stated, worlds which serve as stations and resting places for errant spirits? Answer. Yes, there are worlds which are specially adapted to the reception of wandering beings, worlds which they may temporarily inhabit, a sort of camping ground in which they may bivouac for a time, and repose after a too lengthened erraticity a state which is always somewhat wearisome. Those worlds constitute intermediary stations between the worlds of other orders, and are graduated according to the nature of the spirits who are to come into them, and who will find in them the conditions of a rest more or less enjoyable. Question: can the spirits who occupy these worlds quit them at pleasure? Answer: yes, they can leave them for any other region to which they must have to go. They are like birds of passage alighting on an island in order to rest and recover strength for reaching their destination. Question: do spirits progress during their sojourns in the transitional worlds? Answer: certainly. Those who thus come together do so with a view to their instruction, and in order more readily to obtain permission to enter a higher region, and thus to advance their progress towards the perfection which is their aim. Question: are the transitional worlds of a special nature and destined to be forever the sojourn of wandering spirits? Answer: no. Their position in the hierarchy of worlds is only temporary. Question: are they at the same time inhabited by corporal beings? Answer: no. Their surface is sterile. Those who inhabit them have no corporal wants. Question: is this sterility permanent, and does it result from anything special in their nature? Answer: no, their sterility is only transitional. Such worlds are then void of everything like the beauties of nature? Answer: the inexhaustible richness of creation is manifested by beauties of immensity that are no less admirable than the terrestrial harmonies which you call the beauties of nature. Question: since the state of those worlds is only transitory, will the state of our earth at some future time be of that character? Answer: such has already been its state. Answer: at what epoch? During its formation is the answer. And now the author is saying this part: nothing in nature is useless. Everything has its purpose, its destination. There is no void. Every portion of immensity is inhabited. Life is everywhere. Thus, during the long series of ages which preceded man's appearance upon the earth, during the vast periods of transition attested by the superposition of the geological strata, before even the earliest formation of organized beings, upon that formless mass, in that arid chaos in which the elements existed in a state of fusion, there was no absence of life. Beings who had neither human wants nor human sensations found therein a welcome refuge. The will of God had ordained that the earth, even in that embryonic state, should be useful. Who then would venture to say that of the innumerable orbs which circulate in immensity, one only, and one of the smallest of them all, lost in the crowd, has the exclusive privilege of being inhabited? What in that case would be the use of the others? Would God have created them merely to regale our eyes? Such a supposition, of which the absurdity is incompatible with the wisdom that appears in all his works, becomes still more evidently inadmissible when we reflect on the myriads of heavenly bodies which we are unable to perceive. On the other hand, no one can deny the grandeur and sublimity of the idea that worlds in course of formation, and which are still unfitted for the habitation of material life, are nevertheless peopled with living beings appropriate to its condition, an idea which may possibly contain the solution of more than one problem as yet obscure.